Hello, you're back with Dave and Tim at the Single Malt Review as we return to one of those whisky markets we've neglected sorely in our reviews of years, Ireland.
People have asked for it,
yes,
and lo we respond, if belatedly, but that's how we operate here. Irish whisky, and there is a lot of Irish whisky out there, and so we're going to look at a fair few of them, actually, in this new year of whisky reviewing. And I don't think it's going to be the first one, because there should have been a Paddy's that came up, unless it was deemed improper in the post-process. But anyway, this is, of course, as you can see, Teeling single malt Irish whisky. And that much, the bottle can be trusted on. Shut up, Sybil. Aside from that, this is actually a little bit sneaky. Much as Teeling Whisky Company is all about the craft, and it is all about the craft, this is a non-chill filtered, non-coloured, 46% ABV, single malt Irish whisky, but the rest of the information is a bit, I think it's a bit sneaky. There is a Teeling distillery. It's a very, very new distillery. Oh dear. Come on, this way, Sybil. There we are. There we go. Where was I? Yes, there is a Teeling distillery. It was built in 2015, not very long ago. It has been distilling, presumably since a little bit after that. And it's sort of smack in the middle of Dublin, the first working distillery in Dublin new one, for quite a wee while. Of course, Jameson's famously distilled there way back in the olden times. This is not from that distillery. No. It is indeed single malt Irish whisky, and we'll get into exactly what that means because it's a bit more complicated over there. But it is in fact from another distillery.
They do make clear on the label this is variously produced, crafted or bottled by the Teeling Whisky Company. They never ever say it's been distilled by them though.
Yeah, where it's distilled is Cooley Distillery, which doesn't, as far as I'm aware, have its own brand. It doesn't have its own label. You can't just go out and buy Cooley whisky by Cooley. But it makes a lot of whisky for a lot of different brands. Writers, Tears, and so forth. You can go down somewhere because I know you're on the warpath here. But yeah, it really rarely shows up in its natural form. It's a bit interesting because, like I said it was going to be complicated. Irish single malt whisky. So that means that it is 100% malted barley, and it has gone through a pot still, distilled at least 2 times. We can't even find out whether it was distilled twice or 3 times.
Most Irish whisky, 3 is the common number.
So I think safe to assume 3 times, but I have heard that Cooley has done some, or maybe done a lot of double distillation in the past. So this might be actually a lot closer to Scotch than we're thinking.
Yeah.
Irish whisky, and I'll go on a bit of a skip ahead if you don't want to learn about Irish whisky now, because there's a few sort of odds and ends when you're dealing with Irish whisky that it pays to be aware of. It comes in way more forms than Scotch whisky. There's a lot more sort of designations of it. In Scotch whisky, you've got malt, you've got grain, and you've got the mixtures of the two variously. Irish whisky is a bit different, and it comes down to, because of a great many things, tax. Way back in the day, I forget who was in charge of Ireland back then. It would have been some English chap, I'm sure. Introduced the tax on malted barley because there was a lot of Irish distilling, very very healthy, making a lot of money. Got to get your bit. So what better to do than tax malted barley? It was much harder to hide than distilled spirit. You could always put that in the basement, hide it under the hill, whatever. Big fields of barley, bit more difficult to hide from the taxman. So what to do? Irish ingenuity. They realised, as a lot of people did, that you don't actually need 100% malted barley. You only need a bit of malted barley, and the amylase enzyme will be generously shared by that malted barley and will malt pretty much anything you've got in the vat, be it potato peelings, rice, corn. The distilling industry really revolves around malted barley and its generosity it has with its particular enzyme that cracks starch into fermentable fructose and sucrose. So they just stopped using 100% malted barley, and they went to a blend of maybe call it, half and half, or things revolving around that. There's, accounts vary, but there was a significant portion of unmalted barley in Irish whisky that dramatically changed the flavour, but was generally produced the same way. It went through pot stills. That is called pure pot still or pot still, and you'll remember that from Redbreast. Redbreast is probably the most famous. Redbreast, pure pot still Irish whiskey, made in exactly the same way, gone through exactly the same copper pot stills as everything else. Would be single malt whiskey, but for the fact that it has this contingent of unmalted
And
barley.
would otherwise be called grain whiskey, except it's made from barley, which of course is a grain, but
It would be called grain whiskey if it went through a column still,
gotcha.
but was made with 100% barley. As you fell afoul of in our, what I hope is now famous 12 grams of Christmas and the old Loch Lomond fast ball that you caught there. Anyway, that is probably as exhaustive a definition as you really have the stomach for. We'll get on to the
in
whiskey
this case, though, this is an actual single malt, right?
This is a single malt.
Yes, no coloration,
No coloration,
filtration.
no filtration, so it's a good craft single malt.
Sorry, I'm being beleaguered by a cat. I will tend to her.
It is of undisclosed age. I don't think it's particularly old. I think it's pretty much between 6 and 8 years old. If that, I think there may even be younger whiskey in here.
Any hints as to the cask mixture used here?
Yes, and it's so
Bourbon
weird.
is widely used in Irish whiskey.
It's so weird, I had to write it down.
wow.
I needed a cheat sheet. Funnily enough, this comes from every cask except bourbon.
Wow.
It's like they found every cask under the sun and forgot that bourbon was the cheapest.
Well, Sybil seems to like the bottle.
Yes, she likes anything she can put her face on. Oh, good grief, you've cursed us now, Dave. Now she's in the equipment. No, your problem. You have to come on, Sybil. Here we go.
She was craving the attention. I couldn't say no.
All right, this comes from, and this is verbatim from the website. Cabs have white Burgundy, which for those in the know means Chardonnay, port, sherry, and Madeira.
So Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay.
Yep, port, sherry, and Madeira.
Wow.
No bourbon in sight, which is really, really odd because that's typically almost, it can be 100% of most of what Irish whiskey is matured in. So
that's a
very,
big
very
wine
weird
influence then.
Yeah, it's almost solely wine
No,
influence.
it's with a little port and sherry on the side just to...
Yeah, and I think that explains the rather...
Oh, that is a heck of a nose. Yeah.
It's a rather amorphous nose on it.
It's big though. It's got some strong spice fruity characters.
There's a hell of a lot of spice, and there's lots of... To me, there's conspicuous quantities of ginger. There's
ginger, it is peppery. There's crystallized ginger. It is well spicy.
All right, fluff bum, you've had your bit. All right, professional now. Professional.
No, there's a touch of licorice. There is. Have you ever had Dutch salted licorice? You ever tried that?
I have. I wouldn't go so far as to call this Dutch licorice. Oh, the state of the table now.
It is covered in cat fur. I apologise.
Anyway.
Sybil does not. Right. Anyway, yeah.
Yes, licorice, ginger, and
Yeah. A bit of sea salt.
almost
Confections made therefrom.
everything but the typical flavours, as I guess you might expect from this diverse lineup of casks.
A little bit of sherbet and some sour boiled sweets too.
And white jelly bean from those in jelly bean territories, which is something, funny enough, I pick up in tequila more often than not.
Yeah, this has reminded me a little of my beloved tequila blanco.
It's kind of a weird, mix here. Let's see what goes on the tongue.
Oh, there is a lot happening there. There is a lot of jelly beans, aniseed, peppermint.
Yeah,
There's almost sharp and active whiskey. I'm liking it though.
There's almost wheat characters in here. I know there's no wheat in here because it's single malt whiskey, but there's sort of the aniseed and the... God, it's almost like there was a half portion of sort of ouzo dropped into this. It's so weird.
Fluffy, liqueur-y, slightly sweet spiciness there, which is evocative of wheat whiskey, and as you say, things like ouzo and other
there's still
liqueurs.
Heaps of white jelly bean, dare I say black jelly bean almost in here.
There's definitely a touch of licorice.
There's
anything but what I'd expect from white wine casks. I've had white wine cask whiskey before. It's rare. It shows up in finishes occasionally, and this is utterly at odds with all that, which is a good thing. I like a bit of a surprise.
Weirdly enough, the Madeira might be coming through stronger than the rest of them.
I've had Madeira finished whiskies before, and I've enjoyed them almost universally, I think. And I get what you mean. There's a little bit of that nice, strong dessert wine sweetness.
Yeah. This is pretty wacky stuff.
It
really.
It's really out there, but it's a very eclectic mix, but it works. It is harmonising in a way I would not have expected. That strange cask lineup.
It is like very little else.
Yeah.
And although it is made very, very similar to Scotch, and is made out of barley and so forth. Went through pot stills. It is distinctly Irish. You would never get something like this in Scotland. Maybe from something out of the depths of the twisted corridors of Loch Lomond or something, but that would be absolutely it.
I do think there's a lot of rather young whiskey in here. I'm getting a lot of the fresh and slightly raw notes of a relatively fresh spirit.
That's coming around to the problem I have with this. This is very interesting whiskey. It's a very eclectic whiskey. It's whiskey with a lot of things going on, but it is not a mature whiskey, to the point which I would have to call it an immature whiskey. There's just a little too much youth going on here. I'm all for a vibrancy in a whiskey, but there comes a point where the whiskey is so young that it's just not ready yet, and that's difficult to really itemise exactly the taste of that and the sensation of that. But this raises flags of, I wasn't quite ready when I went into the bottle. I think a single more year might have done wonders for this whiskey. I understand why they bottled it. I mean, they're a new company, they have to get some product out there, they've probably got creditors lining up. But yeah, I think another year would have benefited this remarkably, such that scores for this one, as it is, it's a 78. I think it would have been well into the 80s with just one more year's maturation, I think. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to go somewhat higher. While I share your misgivings and apprehensions about the immaturity of the whiskey, I think that what it does bring to the table does a lot to offset that. The sheer,
it's
irreverency,
unique,
the bizarre mixture of casks, and the choice to use some of those bold and really off-beaten track wine casks and other curious influences has served this well, and it gets an 87 from me just for the sheer variety that it brings to the table and how well it carries those, despite being a younger whiskey.
I think this, as the scores prove out in this case, this is a whiskey which different people will have very different reactions to. I'll certainly say it is 100% unique. It's incredibly unique. It really is quite unlike things we've encountered in the past, but just a touch immature for me. But yeah, it's a really, really interesting look at Irish whiskey. Oh, I forgot to say where Cooley was from. It's I put my paper down now. It is in a curious position. It is between Dunock in the Republic side and Newry in the, or it could be Newry, I don't know, Newry in the Northern Ireland side, so the British end. And I think the nature of the whiskey kind of reflects that. The sort of single malt whiskey, that normally comes from the, across the Protestant line, I guess you could call it. Bushmills is the famous one there. They make slightly... Oh dear, Dave's gone off. That's how you know we've been
patting a cat.
How now we've been recording too long. Anyway, get into how Irish whiskey changes depending on where it's distilled in the country another time. But Ireland has, in its own way, two very distinct distilling regions. Ireland taken as Ireland, it has only one. But Ireland as a continent, taking Northern Ireland into account, then there are two very, very different flavours of whiskey, and I think this sort of straddles both things. But that is a story for another time. So, we'll let you go now. This video, I suspect, has been a bit of a mess, being at cats and whatever. So, anyway, keep safe, Slanger, we will be right back. Stick around.